Welcome, everybody. Today, I wanted to share the evidence that I am seeing that the whole planet is evolving spiritually, and essentially, we are all becoming one. So, I've got several different pieces of evidence that I want to share with you. The first is more obvious. It's our phones and it's the internet. It is connecting all of us in a way that we've never been connected before, and it is allowing news to spread worldwide very rapidly. So that is clear evidence that we are all being connected in a way that we haven't been connected before. YouTube is also a way that we are being connected. In the past, everyone had a specialization, right? And we would do our own thing. Now we can go on YouTube and we can pretty much learn how to do anything ourselves. So in that way, we are all learning the same information. We are all becoming one. Artificial intelligence is another way. Some people find it scary, but in other ways, it is a way that we are able to learn anything that has been known by humanity. Any of us can learn that at any point. So we are all being connected again that way. One of the harder aspects to get your mind around, this is coming up through artificial intelligence, is finding out what is reality or not reality. Is it true or is it fake? But does it matter? It only matters if we are connected or attached to what we are thinking, whether it's true or false. Because at some point we are going to get to the place where we create our own reality. So in the past, we've been attached to history. History is the way it's always been. We've always heard about it the same way. It's getting to the place now where we are letting go of some of that history. Some people are trying to change history. And it's getting to that flexible place where it's either true or it's not true, but it doesn't matter. If we can let it go, so it no longer matters, we're no longer attached to it being the truth or not truth. At that point, I think we will start to create our own future. But we have to get to that place in the middle, that gooey place where chrysalises go through before they become a butterfly. It becomes goo. It's no longer a chrysalis. It's no longer a butterfly. It's something in the middle. We have to get there before we can move to become the butterfly. So in order to release our attachments, we have to see things clearly. We have to look at them clearly. And that is happening. We can see that happening all around us in many different ways. So let me give you a couple of examples. So one is the investigations that keep happening, like in the government. We're not investigating everything, but some things we are looking into clearly. So we know exactly what happened. When we know exactly what happened, we can release the tension around it. We can release the attachments to it and move on. So that's one way it's happening. Another way is in media, and the example I will give is Formula One. I'm a Formula One fan, so I see this happening in, for example, Formula One, which is racing, right? Car racing. Now, when we see the races, we will actually see them step back. So in the past, you would just have the cameraman take video of the race. Now we see a cameraman taking video of a cameraman taking the video of the race. So we stepped back one layer. We're also seeing things more in depth. So there's a Netflix series called Drive to Survive about the inner workings of Formula One. We also have social media. The drivers themselves are sharing information about themselves on social media. So we are finding out in way more depth about the whole sport of Formula One than we ever have in the past. So that is happening in many different arenas. Also, the words that are being used that we're hearing these days are more collective words. We're hearing about woke and about being awake. We're hearing about self-awareness. We're hearing about consciousness. So listeners, you're listening to things as you listen to programs and media and news, listen for the words because they are there and I keep hearing them and it's really fun to hear them happening. There is also a merging of the sexes going on, right? In terms of equality, the sexes are becoming more equal in society and in laws. Also, physically, there's a merging going on with the LGBTQIA plus community, right? There's a merging of the sexes, and that is us all becoming one. We also have a spiritual teacher running for president for the second time, Marianne Williamson. Now, I don't know whether she'll get anywhere, but the fact that we are having a spiritual teacher run for president is huge, right? In the past, that you would never expect that to happen. Now, we are also still having bad stuff happen, right? We can all see there are certainly negative things happening. And the analogy that I've been using for myself is, and this really only works if you know what snow is, you in a place that has had snow or you've experienced snow. When the snow plows come along, they push all the snow to the side of the road and you get left with these piles. And as the snow melts, the smaller piles melt away much faster, but the big piles stay for longer. They can stay for weeks longer than the small piles. And I think that's what we're seeing happening. Those big, dense, bad stuff that we've stored inside of us is melting away slower, but they will eventually melt away and then we will move on. But that's what we're seeing in society and around the world today. So that's the evidence I've seen. I have a couple of people with me here today, and I'm hoping maybe they've seen more evidence and they can share with us. And if not, we'll just talk about something else. So hi, Dana and Claudia. Do either of you have something that you can see as evidence?
I definitely see evidence, and I don't know if it's the world as a whole. I can talk about like my town and like my community, and so the people I choose to surround myself with. It seems like everyone's evolving. I can see it happening, but again, I don't now associate with people outside of, not too often. I don't know how to say this. I am trying to be more selective around the people that I surround myself with. And so the people that I happen to be surrounding myself with do seem to be evolving spiritually. I think they're the ones who helped me evolve spiritually. And so like, my yoga studio, it's a very safe place. People have all different kinds of personal growth practices. And so I learn a lot about spirituality from them. But I guess beyond that, when I think about the outside world, I also teach kids, and I was thinking about what do I see in my students? And I don't know, again, if this is because I live in a different community than I did before. I worked in a relatively tough school district before. Yeah, there's still bad things happening, but hopefully it's getting better. They're focusing more on whole child. There's much more love and empathy you see happening, not just grades. And I definitely see that at my school. Towards the end of when I was in Denver, I saw that too. It's hard. I don't know how much is really changing, but here where I am now, further north,
Do
I
you see the
do.
children having more tolerance than you think they had in the past, at least like compared to when
Yeah,
you were at school?
thanks for that guiding question. Yeah, I needed that. Yes, I do see a lot more tolerance now, and I don't know if I'm more aware of that now because I have it's what I'm focusing on, where you put your attention, right? So yes, I definitely see more empathy, more caring, diversity, accepting of others that are not like us. I think that's something that we teach in school and that hasn't always been taught. I don't know if it's always taught at home, but I definitely see evidence of that. I see evidence of fathers showing affection towards their kids. I think that's beautiful. I don't think that is something I've seen in years past. Children talking about their feelings as opposed to getting shut down, or especially with anger, those big feelings like anger and sadness. It's okay to be sad and talking out feelings. So
That's great.
yeah.
That's really good to
Is
hear.
that evidence? That sounds like evidence, right?
It is because it's in the school system. I mean, I see that over here in California too. And my children are way more tolerant than the children at the school when I was at school. So I do think that's shifting. And I think that's great. I'm not sure the older generations are shifting quite as much in that regard. but things are changing so rapidly that I think it's the youngsters that are really going to make the big changes for us as a society.
Yeah, I am hopeful. And one other thing I thought of, it just came to me, and this happened to me just this week, and it's, I guess, about the media and movies. And so I don't know if, I mean, definitely not everyone's going to agree, but I recently stopped eating meat just for, a variety of different reasons. And so I watched some big blockbuster movies, and they both, you wouldn't even think that they would sneak a message about animals in, but blockbuster movies sneaking in, like, I guess that maybe I can be specific. One was Noah, and I didn't like the movie. I was just kind of interested in, I used to like Bible stories, and they discussed, like, that we don't have dominion over animals. And then Star Wars, one of the Star Wars is Chewbacca was going to eat this little bird, and these other little birds were all really sad, and he ended up being friends with the birds. And so, like, I still don't know how I feel. I don't know if I'll go back to eating meat, but there's just something where it's like, that's something I'm pondering, and I know other people ponder that as well. So yeah,
Yes.
mainstream movies.
Yeah. There's also a lot of spirituality, I think, in some of the mainstream movies and the mainstream series that are coming out now that just had not been there before, or maybe I was not at the place that I saw them before. So I think that's really fun that so much of humanity is being exposed to these spiritual concepts. They're not necessarily aware they're being exposed to them, but they are there. And in terms of the meat, I've been vegan for years and years, and then vegetarian and macrobiotic and all these different types of diets. And I went back to eating meat because I let go of those beliefs I had and the resistance I had, and the chains holding me back from just being and just enjoying what I enjoy. And
Mhm.
so now I will pretty much eat whatever I want, and it's very freeing. So just something for the future.
Yeah, I do think about that. I don't want to be restricted. There's something in me where it's like, I think that we eat too much meat, and maybe the wrong kind of meat, but like, yeah, I am not tied to this identity of being a vegan or a vegetarian, but I just want to be mindful of, like, what I'm eating and why I'm eating it. So yeah, it's interesting to hear, like, all these different dietary lifestyles, and I really like it when people are like, it doesn't, what I do doesn't necessarily, it's not necessarily right for you. I think that's a message I hear a lot, maybe not from everyone, but yeah, I mean, if
Yeah,
you
because it's
had,
a journey, right? You're
yeah,
going on
right.
your journey. When we start telling other people, well, I'm not eating meat, you shouldn't eat meat either, right? When we start telling other people what they should be doing based on our beliefs, that's when I think it crosses the line. And I remember being there myself. I mean, I was a pretty strict vegan for many years, and I did have that resistance to other people eating meat, but that was my resistance to work on, right? So I did a lot of tapping with EFT on those beliefs and that resistance, and let that go.
I'm going to go back to media. I think that with the media we have with our children, the phones, the iPads, the laptops, I think that they are being introduced to a bigger field of what's going on. And I was scrolling through the TV last night. I was exhausted, but so I was just scrolling. I noticed that there was a lot of documentaries on waking up. I was looking for a certain show to see if it was out on TV yet. And then another one came up, and another one came up. And I'm like, wow, I was not aware that there was so many quote unquote awakening movies or documentaries out there. And I thought, how great. And then you go on YouTube, and like we're doing right now, I mean, more people are just waking up to that is a big start.
Yeah, it is, and it's good evidence. Okay, anything else, or do you have a question, a general question about anything else? that we could talk about?
I have EFT question.
Okay, let's do it. Claudia's great with EFT too.
Okay, so I've just started practicing with other people and it's going pretty well. I'm just looking to improve. So I guess the first thing is if you notice in yourself or in other people that they're just telling the story and not feeling the feelings, like are there prompts to get people to like really try to feel the feelings? Sit with the
Yes, or
feelings.
notice the feelings.
Notice
Yes.
the feelings.
Well, keep telling the story to begin with, right? It might take tapping and walking through the story 2 or 3 times in order to let go of that first layer of resistance so that you can become aware of the feelings. And then if someone else is telling the story and you think there should be some emotion at that point in the story, right? Some trigger happens, then you can stop them and say, okay, what do you think? What did you feel right then? Right? It might actually have to take them stopping in the middle of the story, remembering exactly what was happening for them to realize, oh, I was scared or whatever. Does that help?
That definitely does help. And I
Because if
know,
you think there should be some emotion there, then there probably is.
yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
that's where you have to start trusting yourself.
Yeah,
And
I'll
it
get
just
there.
may be that they're not aware of it yet. But sometimes it just takes walking through the story more than one time to let go of that outer layer.
Okay, that makes sense. I know I've heard this before. But need to hear it 10 more times.
Yeah.
Can I ask a couple more?
Please.
Okay. So then there was a gentleman, really nice gentleman. He wanted to work on blocks around business, and his business was going up and down, and he just couldn't figure out like why can't he just succeed at business? So that's what he wanted to focus on. And then he started talking about his childhood trauma, and he has a beautiful story where he healed from cancer and used EFT and wanted to apply some of this. He worked on his childhood trauma issues through EFT and wanted now to, after healing, wanted now to work on business. So we started well, he told me his whole life story, great story, and then we talked about like, okay, so now you told me a lot. What would be the most important thing to work on today? What would you like to address first? And he wanted to address a childhood trauma when his father died. So we worked on that. He released some tears. He yawned. And then at the end, we took his number went down, his SUD went down. He said at the end that he still didn't feel how that would affect his business goals. So like we went from wanting to focus on business, but then he wanted to focus on the childhood, that trauma, and then didn't notice an impact on the business goals. So then I can't remember how we ended, but like, how do you end something like that? Do I suggest a focus if he first started like out saying I wanted to work on business? Yeah. So
Well, I guess you could ask him, it's like, well, would you rather work on this childhood trauma or would you rather work on business? They may be connected, but they may not. But the fact that it came up for him, it's like, that's what I want to work on, to me would mean that was most important thing to work on. And maybe the business needs to come later. Right? It might be that they're connected or there might not. But also using his words, if he went to work on the business, he said there were multiple blocks to his business. So what are the blocks, right? That word there shows there's an energetic block to his business, and I wonder if he knows what they are.
Okay, that's what we're going to talk about next time.
Okay.
And then the last one was very similar. I just happened to have two practice people who are very healing from childhood trauma, and they know that it affects them today. And so she told me a lot, about her life story. And again, we talked about like, so what would be the most immediate thing to work on? What would help you the most? And she said her ear. She has something tinnitus or something going on in her ear. So we worked on that, and she said she felt a small shift, but she said, but I've always had it. Like it's not gonna go down much. So then we were running out of time, and I ended it with like, okay, so maybe can we address the block? I mean, do you believe that you can heal? And she's like, No. And so she wants to meet again. And so I'm wondering, like, do we start with what she wants to work on? Or do we start with like, okay, can we address those blocks to healing? Because she has other physical issues that she wants to work on as well. But if she has blocks and she doesn't believe it's possible to heal, is it a good place to start with the resistance to healing?
Yes. Yes. You want to start on, I don't believe that this is going to work. I don't believe, I've always had tinnitus. It's not going to go away by just tapping on myself. Yeah. Let go of that resistance, and then ask her, okay, do you think like maybe there's a possibility it might work now? Right. So look for the shift. Is that resistance gone a little bit? And then, with something like tinnitus or physical ailments, there are many different aspects. So you can work on the physical aspect itself. It's like this ringing in my ear. It bugs me. It annoys me. All the emotions around it, the things it stops her doing. But also, when did it come on? She said she's always had it. When was the first time she remembers having it? And what happened in the 6 months prior to that? Was there some trauma that happened, something she didn't want to hear, some loud noise, something in that 6 months prior to her noticing it, or maybe even the day it started, and work on that trauma of that event as well, because you've got to find all those different aspects in order to release it.
Okay. And then I guess the last question is just remembering all this stuff. Yeah, I guess I take notes, but I'm wondering, like, would it be beneficial at all to send them like journal prompts beforehand, just to kind of to get them thinking about it? And then I don't know. I definitely need to have these notes down there, like what questions might I ask for next time, since it's not my first time meeting with them.
Yeah. I'm not sure I would ask them to think about it too much ahead of time, because we are emitting a signal, right? We're emitting a signal all the time. And if you have them think about these negative things when they're not tapping, they're emitting that signal and attracting similar things to their future. So when you're thinking about it, you want to be tapping if you can, right? You want to be
Gotcha.
releasing that signal so that you're not attracting it again.
Wonderful. All right. That was very helpful. Thank you, Anne.
Good. You're welcome. You have anything else there, Claudia?
Well, she brought up, Dana brought up that, I find that if I even just tap 10 minutes a night, set a timer and just tap, just setting a timer and just tapping. And I have found sometimes that I don't know what to tap on, and I just start tapping and something will come up. And I think it's really hard for people that do not tap to get into the habit of tapping. And if they just started with like a 5-minute timer, a 10-minute timer, they're going to end up going longer. I feel I have that I go longer and longer because more things pop up as I'm tapping on one thing. Oh, well, yeah, I did hear a loud noise when I was 6 years old and it just hurt my ears so bad. So I think that maybe recommending or suggesting a small amount of time, set a timer for 5 minutes. And I know I get distracted sometimes and I'll have to reset my timer because I left and I didn't stay with it. But if I set my timer at least for 10 minutes a night, I know that I've got my tapping in and I feel better. I sleep better.
Nice. So Dana, I guess you could suggest to your clients, the people you're practicing with, to do that, right? Maybe they could do some work on their own and just tap and imagine they're just telling their friend about what's going on with whatever, right? With their business blocks or with their tinnitus. They could just talk it through.
I liked what you said. I listened to you a lot. I think it was last week. You said, pretend like you're calling your best friend And as you're talking to your best friend, imaginarily, tap.
Yeah.
Gee, Janet, I feel like blah, 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 whatever I'm feeling. And I use you. I just say, okay, Ann, I'm going to sit here and talk to you for 10 minutes. And talking like a phone call, it helps me to open up. Just a little suggestion. Works or it doesn't.
Yeah, it's a good way to get them practicing too, get them used to the points on their own. I mean, it sounds like the gentleman probably is already if he's used it for cancer, which is great.
Yes.
And the woman knows EFT tapping as well. So yeah, that would
Okay.
be good. A little bit of homework, right?
Yes. Yeah, well, that's what got me so far was doing it every night, right? I mean, I would do it for an hour to an hour and a half a night because I was determined. Had to change. So yeah, I mean that's when the big shifts happen, was just keep doing it. Okay, well, thank you for joining me today, everybody, and have a good week. Hopefully we'll see some of you next week. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you, Ann. I appreciate you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Anne. I'm glad I could make it. See you again
Yeah, I'm glad you could
soon.
too.